we're going to go back to the West Coast and talk about the Aces, because they're a long cry from the Aces that we saw once upon a time. What's going on in Vegas?
Man, it's a lot going on, Ashley. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to watch in a lot of ways because, excuse me, you just think about this team that has had so much success, and you saw like the chemistry and just everything that they've done as a team. But just like with any team, you have these teams who have done the things to catch up to you in a way. And then you also, in addition to that, have lost some key players on your team, right? So the bench that they have is definitely different. I mean, you don't have Plum, Clark, Hayes. There are so many players that did so many things to propel that team in ways that no one even saw. Maybe the stat line wasn't even there. Yeah. But because they don't have those pieces, you can really, really see it, especially
I'm literally looking at the side-by-side comparison of the team from this year and last year, and I didn't even realize it was this different.
Oh, it's definitely different. Yeah. And it's like you have A'ja Wilson, and no one can deny what she does, but she's only one person. You need other people to come in. And quite frankly, Lloyd, who they really thought was going to be a top producer for the team, is not. You know, I think 29.9% from the field, average 9, 4, and 2. Like after 11 years in the league, that was the lowest output that Jewel has ever had. And so she's even called to maybe even bring herself out of the starting lineup because she knows she needs to produce more, which I also think is the mark of a good player, but that's another conversation. So regardless, they just don't have what they've had in years past. It shows. And I'm not saying you're pressing that button yet, but you close to it because,
the panic button?
Yeah, I'm not saying I couldn't remember what the name was, but don't jinx
it. I didn't know if it was the panic button, abort mission button. There's a lot of buttons.
Yeah, it's the panic one. It's the panic one. But I don't know. I mean, I'm real close to it, right? Like I'm almost pressing it, but you know, it's hard also when you have A'ja Wilson out with a concussion, I believe, and you know they just haven't been all the way healthy. So it's a lot going on that team. They are a different team than they were in years past, and definitely changes need to be made.
You know, and I think some of it is just that if you go into, like Ashley was saying, looking at the rosters side by side, and if there are players that are carryover that we're expecting to play the same role, they got to step it up. You know, and I've talked about post play. Now there are some injuries that they've been dealing with, so you know that's always something. Megan Gustafson has been out. They're getting Elizabeth Kitley, basically this is her first year, right? Getting her integrated. But, you know, I think that I've always wanted to see Kia Stokes be a little bit more aggressive offensively. I think in the last handful of games, we're starting to see that a little bit more. Jewel Lloyd already mentioned that. But for me, what makes the Aces so dynamic, or what made them so dynamic in those back-to-back years, is that they were able to dominate in the post. And we have to say, like, if you want to talk about hitting the panic button, I think you can do that insular, right? Just talking about the Aces, but you also have to look at how the league has changed since they went back-to-back. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's people out here, there's teams out here like the New York Liberty that we talked about, like Minnesota, the two teams in the finals last year, that they are playing and have almost perfected, at least as close to perfect as we've seen positionless basketball be played in the WNBA. And so when you have a player like Kia Stokes, she's going to have to be able to give more offensively if she's going to be in that starting role, because she's guarding people who are going to have her running all across the court because they can shoot from anywhere. I mean, Jonquel Jones, not only shooting from the three, but dribbling off the dribble, taking Tina Charles to the basket. Like, what are we, like, come on, this is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that we spoke about, Alicia, was just kind of like, you know, whenever you have the changing of the guard, whenever you have new teams and new blood coming in each and every draft class, you know, the landscape of the WNBA changes, right? You can only be top dog for so long. And that's what makes the league exciting, right? And I think that, you know, comparing it to the NBA is the best thing I can use as an example. That league has had 7 different champions in 7 different seasons. And I think we're seeing that kind of trajectory in the WNBA, where it's going to be hard for one team to remain at the top for an extended period of time. I think that, you know, the Fever are in a position to start making some noise. You know, the Sky are not that far off. Obviously, you still have the Liberty and Minnesota. We were talking about how the Dream are taking everybody by surprise this early in their rebrand, if you will. There's just so many teams now that have kind of figured out what to do well and have capitalized off of that. And I think the talent is also so much more dispersed. Maybe it has been in previous years that the Aces were maybe the last of their kind when it comes to the way that the WNBA looked in that dynasty era. And I think now we're seeing teams, maybe we're seeing less dynasties, but we're seeing more equality across the league, which is making it anybody's league at this stage, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also think that there is, when you have a team, right, there is long-term planning of like cultivating young talent and getting people to come up into those spots
Right.
that, you know, are going to be vacated by people who have been there for a long time, right? But then you also have the right now. And I think for me, if I look at the Aces, they kind of have an issue with that long-term plan versus, you know, you had a good team that was very, very, very solid, but then you lose a couple of key players and you have nobody to step into those moments, or those positions, I should say, rather. So it's to me, that's part of it too, is you got to think about that long term. Even though you're winning, you got to think about what happens when you have these players that are no longer with you. You got to plug those in to remain consistent in that winning. And so I don't know, that's just something that I see too when I look at the overall like roster and the movement that they've had.